Hello everybody, my name is Ethan Pomainville and I'm a super senior at CCTL Early College. I'm doing a senior project teaching people about Lake Norman and the history that it carries, and which now has turned into the important landmass it is today. When I was tasked with trying to help the community while still doing something I love, I tried to think, what do I enjoy doing the most and what can I help to benefit people with? And for me, that's nature. That's always been something I found really interesting, really enjoyable, and I love being outside. So I wanted to combine the two. I also love history too. So I decided to take history and nature and combine the two and teach people about Lake Norman and Lake Norman State Park and the history that it carries and which now has built it to what it is today. I do this because it is great to know the history of the place that you live in and spend time in it because it allows you to appreciate what you have access to much, much more. Included in my episode today will be the recording that will include the intro, the history of Lake Norman and its creation, the importance of Lake Norman today, and the environmental aspects, all in one recording that will take you about the same time as it will to walk the Dragonfly Trail at Lake Norman State Park, which is one of the shorter trails, but has informational hotspots all around the trail. If you'd like to skip to the start of the history section, skip to 220. If you'd like to skip to the fascinating thing underneath the lake, skip to
706.
If you'd like to skip to the importance of Lake Norman today, skip to
1110.
Now, if you'd like to skip to some of the environmental aspects going on with the lake, please skip to
1208.
Lake Norman itself is a staple to the people of Iredell County and the surrounding counties. It's a part of everyone's everyday lives, in some way, shape, or form. Lots of people live in Iredell County and do not know the history of Lake Norman, especially young kids and teenagers, and even some adults.
Now, beneath the water, there are many mysteries and many secret things that people would not normally know or see on land. However, they're hidden and submerged at the depths of the water.
Lake Norman is a man-made lake that has been in the works since the early 1920s, and even prior. James Buchanan Duke, president of the American Tobacco Company, saw a way to bring business and textile industry to North Carolina, and that was water. Duke and his associates studied for years about the hydroelectric power and the process in which they could implement it into their plan. In 1905, Duke propelled their project to start Lake Norman with a $50,000 startup fund, which sounds like a lot of money. Kind of, but if you really think about it, that's $1.4 million. So, it's a lot of money, but it's not enough to get him where he really needed to go. Now, the basis of creating the lake was meant to provide fresh water to the community and create an avenue to reduce flood control. But most importantly, a lake could bring power and business to the area. Now, the issue with the flood control was during those early 1900s, there's a lot of floods going on with how the layout of the water was and the layout of the land that was already there. It was very flat, but also hilly in some places, so it would build up and flood the cities and towns and the surrounding people that are in that area. So it became a major issue, something that really needed to be fixed. So, Duke, his brother Vebb, and Mr. Gil Wiley, who owned the Catawba Power Company, created together the Southern Power Company. This would later turn into the Duke Power that we all know today as a powerhouse in our economy. If you've ever wondered why Duke Power is all over the place in Iredell County, that's why. They've been here for over 100 years. Now, within the next 30 years of the Duke Energy Company being run and created, 10 dams were built, and lots of farmland and town land were bought up with the idea of being submerged underneath the water. Now, this is really cool because if you really think about it, a lot of the land that we see today, we go out by the lakeside, we go fishing, we go jet skiing, whatever it is that you like to do. If you go and look at that, you see how much land that is, how vast of a property that is. And all of that at one point was above the water. There was no water there. It was just farmland, townland, it was people's houses and whatnot. There's so much things underneath that water that we can't see today. Now, people such as like Wib Overcash of the Overcash family sold his 72-acre property in the 1940s for $200 an acre, which in today's money, that pocketed him about $500,000 to sell his property. Now, that property now would be worth a lot more just because of inflation, but with that amount of land property, it gave the Duke Energy Company a lot of space to work with. And so this is just one of many, though. They had a bunch of places that they had to buy up because the Actual Lake Norman stretches 520 miles, and the surface area is about 32,000 acres. So really, Mr. Overcash's land was just a small smidge of what they really needed. If you can't even imagine how big 32,000 acres is, it's about 25,000 football fields. So if you go to a football field and you just kind of picture in your head it just lining up and going as far as you can see, it's still probably not as much as Lake Norman stretches. Now, obviously, as we see on the map, Lake Norman is a peculiar shape. It's kind of like a Christmas tree, and it branches off, so it's different in all ways. But part of this was because of the way that the water from the Catawba River flowed in, but it's also part of the plan by the Duke Power Company to give more space and bring this water to places that really needed it. And it took about 2 years from 1961 till around 1963 before the lake was completely filled up. And now the area surrounding it has the opportunity and the ability to skyrocket in growth because of this lake and because of what it provides. And so more people moved in and more businesses popped up. What's pretty cool too is that Lake Norman became what it is today based off the idea of the Niagara Falls. William States Lee, a young engineer from South Carolina, was there working on a project in Niagara Falls and saw how big and how massive it is and how much hydroelectric power that it could bring, and thought of the idea in 1895, right before the Industrial Revolution, to bring it to North Carolina. And he said, why can't we do this back on the Catawba River? And so the idea was built. And that's where we are today. We have a full-blown lake, handmade, man-made, and that provides so much more for everyone in the community. However, before we get to the importance of the lake, the things that sit beneath the lake are even more interesting, I think. Like I said before, there are many towns and houses that were submerged under the water because of the Duke Power Company buying up all the land. All this land, this 32,000 acres and 520 miles, has to carry something. It obviously wasn't just nothing. Like I said before, it was people's land, farmland, town. There was whole towns beneath the water. And that's what I find really, really interesting. It's something cool that not a lot of lakes have because they aren't man-made. They're naturally made over time. But that's what makes Lake Norman special and important. Now, the Long Island Cotton Mill is one of these examples. There was a major industrial factory called the Long Island Cotton Mill. And it was a mill in the early 1900s that thrived before the creation of the lake. It provided jobs. There was also a village next to it that was connected to it, and a town that was based around the housing for the workers. But then there was a town that was connected that was right down the road that a lot of people were able to go to, and it was a great big part of what the Lake Norman area was to them before it was the lake. And it gave them, the people that live there, a place to live. Now, this land is all underwater now. We can't see any of it unless we go pretty far down. But some of the buildings and some of the cars and things like that are still underneath that water. So if someone went down there far enough, then you'd definitely be able to see it. It'd be poking up and it'd probably scare you a good bit. Now, we are obviously not able to see these objects underneath the water due to the murkiness and the depth, but it's something really, really cool that not a lot of lakes have. There's even a Revolutionary battle site underneath the waters of Lake Norman. This battle was the Battle of Cohen's Ford, which took place on February 1st, 1781, and resulted in 4 American soldiers and 31 British soldiers that had died by the end of the night. The British ended up pushing back the American forces, so it's kind of a loss, and made them retreat back higher. However, at the Battle of Yorktown, the Americans would defeat the British, so it was kind of just something leading up and a way for them to get a little bit of revenge. But before the lake was filled up, there was a statue of General Davidson, who was the main general on the American side that fought hard, but sadly passed away during the battle. But he was proclaimed for his such bravery and leadership in this battle, and so it was put up at the site of Cohen's Ford Dam, which is now at the bottom and the demise of the lake. Lost for whoever wants to find it again, but not for the public's eyes. And there's also something really cool at the bottom of the lake, too. There's a plane. So on September 3rd, 2013, the Charlotte firefighters that were doing a diving exercise used their sonar and spotted a sunk and stuck plane at the bottom of the main channel. Now, obviously, there was confusion because this was never heard before. There wasn't public reports that were put out that let people know what's down there. There wasn't anything really specializing that this had happened. So it became a pretty mass confusion of when that happened and why it's down there in the first place. However, after research and people coming out, it was discovered that a plane had crashed 35 years ago, roughly, and has been sitting there ever since. All the pilots and passengers were rescued the same day by a family who watched it crash. Now it just sits there, and as people pass by, it sits there day by day to be left to the demise of the lake. And the way that they figured out this is that a lady came out who was a part of that was sitting on the lake and on their father's boat. And they ended up seeing that plane crash in front of them. It was obviously at a certain distance away, but they saw that plane crash in front of them. They saw it all happen. And they saw the people escape and they saw them get out. But they took it into themselves to go help these people, get them on their boat and take them to safety. Now, this was in the 1970s, but the lake put the plane to rest, and it has sat there ever since that day. Lake Norman has brought a lot of good to the community and the four surrounding counties that it is connected to. Lake Norman has provided a place for many people to go and enjoy their summers, fish, swim, jet ski, do whatever they really want to. It provides that. This brings a lot of people joy, and has brought a lot of tourism and people to move to the lakeside, which obviously brings in business and money. However, that's not really what's important. There's hundreds of businesses and restaurants since the creation of the lake have been created. The idea and the lure to the lake. The majority of Mooresville has things that go along with the lake, like marinas and all sorts of things that are connected to the lake and provide business. These provide jobs to people that need them and provide a service to the community. The majority of the money that has been brought in is from Lake Norman. And its attraction. It brings so much to the community. However, it also powers businesses. The progression of Duke Energy and the opportunities that it has play a major role in today's time. Duke Energy itself was the reason the lake was built, but it also has to control the lake. They work in connection with the Marshall Steam Station to control the water levels and control the health of the water through underwater systems. These systems need people to run them, and the lake provides jobs like that. Now, it's said that Duke Energy as a company has an annual 27,000 employees. So it provides a lot of jobs for many, many people. And they're also hiring more every single day. So it provides a lot. All of these jobs are due to the lake and hydroelectric power that the dam is able to produce and provide. You got to think about the power lines and all these power line workers. That energy is from the lake. It's from Duke Energy, and that energy is coming from what the lake provides and the dam that the lake has. On the other hand, Duke Energy and Marshall Steam Station provide enough electricity to power 2 million homes in North Carolina, mainly in the Piedmont region, but it spreads all out. This has greatly impacted the people of North Carolina since the creation of the lake and will continue to do so far into the future. However, there are some consequences that come when having such a high-powered operation. Not many, but on a different tone, there are some environmental issues that have surrounded Lake Norman in recent times. With the man-made lake, it can have some flaws. It kicks up dust because the sediment is not packed in properly like how a normal lake is. It kicks up dust and debris, which then makes the water a little murky. And bacteria can grow, but that's been controlled. Lake Norman is not the normal color that people would think of when visiting a lake. However, the water is at most times like a murky brown, but kind of clear in some ways, in which you can see the sediment in the dirt when you scoop it with your hands. I don't know if you've gone to the lake and just scooped it up. In some places it's heavier than others, but there's lots of fish, there's lots of animals that thrive throughout the lake, especially if you go to Lake Norman State Park or something of that sort. You can just walk around and see all the animals that are thriving. There's lizards, there's deer, there's owls, there's rodents, there's all sorts of things. And Lake Norman does a great job at trying to teach young people and kids about that. Such as how if you go on the Dragonfly Trail, you'll see little posts at different stops that teach you about the animals, the birds, the fish that surround the area, the trees that surround the area, how long they live there. There's so many great things that Lake Norman provides for these people in the area and give them an opportunity to learn while still having fun outdoors. Now, there have been some reports of issues of fish dying, bacteria growth, And some of this can be due to the hydroelectric power, but Duke Power do a great job of refilling the lake, providing clean water, making sure the water is good for everyone, good for the animals, and also keep the animals safe. Besides that fact, the lake is necessary to keep the environment and ecosystem thriving no matter what. Overall, Lake Norman is what has made its home of Iredell County and the surrounding counties what it is today. It has created many opportunities for jobs, lakeside homes, large attractions, people to enjoy the outdoors, to go outside, to get active, do all sorts of things. And it's a large attraction for tourism and brings so many things. But it also, most importantly, brings a rich history to the Piedmont region with everything sunk underneath it and everything that will be sunk underneath it in future generations. Now, for generations to come, Lake Norman will be the center and the pride of this area for what it provides and does for everyone. Now, I really appreciate you guys listening to my short recording. In the future, there will be more teaching you about animals and the trees that surround Lake Norman. If you guys would be able to, or you'd like to, I have a QR code and a link that is connected to the end of this, and a flyer, or wherever you saw us at Lake Norman State Park, and on Facebook and around Statesville. And it will just ask you a few questions. You don't have to, if you don't want to answer anything, you don't have to answer anything. If you'd like to, though, I have one specific question on there that asks, what is your favorite Lake Norman memory? And if anything, that's the one I'd really enjoy having people connect with. Solely because of the personal aspect it provides and the way that people can answer it however they really want to. So I appreciate you guys listening and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.